Going through a divorce, it's one of the toughest things anyone can face. And trying to figure out what happens with your home on top of everything else, that just makes it so much harder. So in this explainer, we're just going to walk through the process here in Mississippi, step by step, to hopefully give you some clarity and a path forward.
And before we get into any of the legal stuff, I just want to take a second and say, I'm really sorry you're going through this. This is an incredibly stressful, painful time, and it's okay to not be okay.
Whatever you're feeling, overwhelmed, sad, angry, just plain exhausted, it's all completely normal, and it's all valid. The fact that you're even here right now, taking the time to learn about your options, that shows some serious strength. It's a huge step.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little and get into the practical side of things. In Mississippi, your divorce can really go down one of two main paths. Just understanding what these are is going to be the first step to feeling a little more in control of the whole situation.
The big difference here, it really just boils down to one word: agreement. An uncontested divorce, well, that's the cooperative route. That's where you and your spouse manage to agree on the big stuff. It's almost always faster, way more private, and just gentler on everyone. The other option, a contested divorce, that's when you can't agree and a judge has to step in and make the calls. And as you can imagine, that takes a lot longer and can be a whole lot more stressful. Now here's a key term you're going to hear: irreconcilable differences. This is the legal reason that allows for what's called a no-fault divorce in Mississippi. What does that actually mean? It means nobody has to get up there and prove that someone did something wrong. And this is so important because it can make the whole process so much less combative and a lot more private.
So what do these two paths actually look like when it comes to time? How long is this all going to take? Getting a handle on the timeline can really help you brace for what's ahead and just manage the journey. So if you're able to take that cooperative, uncontested path, the timeline is, pretty straightforward and much, much shorter. You're typically looking at about 3 to 6 months to wrap it all up. It starts with filing the initial paperwork, then you move into a phase of sharing info and working out agreements. And it all ends when a judge signs off and makes it final.
The contested path, though, well, that's a whole different story. It's way more involved and can drag on for 6 months, a year, sometimes even longer than a year and a half. This path includes things like temporary hearings for immediate issues, like who gets to stay in the house right now, a really long discovery phase for all the financials, and if you just can't find a middle ground, it can end up in a full-blown trial.
All right, let's talk about the house. This is so often the most emotional, charged part of a divorce. Why? Because it's not just an asset, right? It's where you built your life, where you have memories. Figuring out what to do with it is just incredibly tough. Now, in Mississippi, when it comes to dividing property, the guiding rule is something called equitable distribution. The key word there is equitable, which means fair. It does not necessarily mean a 50-50 split. A judge is going to look at things like how long you were married and what each of you contributed to determine what's actually fair in your specific situation. So when you boil it all down, there are really two main outcomes for the house. First, one of you keeps it. This usually means that person has to buy out the other share, which often involves refinancing the entire mortgage. The second option, which is super common, is to just sell the home and split whatever profit is left after the mortgage is paid off. And I know, selling the house can feel like a huge loss, but it's really worth asking yourself this question: could letting go, could that actually bring you peace? Cutting those financial ties, getting out from under that shared mortgage, and maybe even leaving behind some painful memories, could that be the key to a fresh start?
To make this real, let's look at a story of how one couple, we'll call them Rachel and David, wrestled with this exact problem. And they found a practical solution that honestly brought them both a ton of relief.
Rachel and David's story really starts with this number, $120,000. That's how much equity they had built up in their home, but it was just trapped. It wasn't cash they could use, and it was creating a ton of financial stress between them.
And while all that money was tied up, this was the reality every single month: about $2,000 for the mortgage, the taxes, the upkeep. It was this constant financial drain that just added to the tension and made it so much harder for them to move on.
So here's the simple, practical path they took. First, they had that tough conversation and realized neither one of them could really afford the house on their own. So they agreed to a fair, direct cash sale. The court approved it as part of their settlement, and get this, the whole thing closed in just 25 days, ending that shared financial burden for good. And the result of that quick decision? Each of them walked away with over $45,000 in cash. And this wasn't just about the money. This was freedom.
It was the capital they both needed to go out, find a new place to live, and actually start building their separate futures.
But honestly, the biggest win wasn't even financial. For them, selling the house was a real turning point. It was what allowed them to finally close that difficult chapter and actually start to heal. It even made co-parenting easier, and just put an end to all that constant stress about money.
Rachel and David's story really shows that a positive, practical outcome is possible, even when things feel messy. So when you feel ready, what are some of the first steps that you can take?
Here's just a simple checklist to help you get moving. First, talk to a family law attorney who gets it, someone compassionate. Then, get a home appraisal so you're working with real numbers, not just guessing. Seriously consider mediation. It can save a ton of money and conflict. And finally, think about a practical option like a direct sale, just to avoid all the pressure of repairs and showings during an already hard enough time.
I just want to leave you with this one thought. I know this is an incredibly hard time, but you are so much stronger than you feel right now. And this is just one chapter in your life. It won't last forever. You absolutely have the strength to get through this, one step at a time, toward a brand new beginning.